Hello and welcome to the show today. As always, leveling up our mindsets, talking about growth, and today I want to talk about content and our content creation allocation, which is a term I coined for fun. And following on from my podcast episode discussion last week on quantity versus quality and really emphasizing on just having traction and making more content so that we get into the flow of things and not getting stuck in just our fears. I really want to talk about content and how that can really push us and one, just increase our general growth mindset and get us more confident at doing things and just remove blockers, but also how we should just think about the content that we make all the time and create more of it, and how to start helping yourself create more and the benefits that will come from that. So there's a few different things to discuss, and there's two really, really big points that I'm going to be hitting on a lot this episode. The first one is that we are all prolific content creators. Like, genuinely, people spend so much of their time creating content and they don't even realize it. And the second big point is that most of our success relies on the content that we create and the types of content and where we put it. And what we aren't realizing is which type of content to focus on and where to be putting it. And when we realize the amount of success that we can get from just changing the massive amounts of content that we're creating all the time anyway, that's where lots of success comes in and how we can start just becoming someone who just has a lot more luck in their life and does stuff, achieves the goals and the aims that they're going for. I still haven't worked out how to speak properly yet, something I'm working on. Let's get into the episode. So, number one, we are all prolific content creators. I genuinely don't think people realize the extent of the amount of content that they create every day. And if we just shift our focus to what we want to achieve and what we're doing with this content, so much is going to be happening for you. So there's three broad types of content that people create. Public content, which is what you're probably thinking that I'm thinking about. So podcasts, YouTubes, blogs, etc., social media, stuff that anyone can consume. And then there's work-related content. So let's say you're in a business, maybe you're writing pitch decks, presentations, sales and marketing materials, competitor analyses. I don't know, if you're a scientist, you might be writing hypotheses, experiments, data, reports, papers, grant applications, pitch decks again, presentations, etc., etc. I could go on for students, bankers, doctors, politicians, accountants. They all make lots of content relating to their work. And then there's the third type of content, which is communication exchange. So outside of your key work deliverables, you're going to have lots of interactions, whether that's within work or just with people you know. So voice, phone calls, video calls, in real life conversations with colleagues or people that you live with or people in the street, just chatting, text-based content, email, Slack, messages. Maybe you write letters still. I sometimes write a postcard to my friends or longer letters when I'm feeling in the mood. It's really nice. I'd recommend it. Probably not going to be a main discussion point for this episode, but I would really say you should write more letters if you don't. Anyway, back to the point of this episode is that we're creating lots and lots of content, right? We're always communicating and doing things. And so our day is really stuffed full with content creation. And our economy and our livelihood is completely dependent on the fact that we are all creators, all of us, and that's essential. Okay, so we all create lots of content. Now, the second one is that, well, my second big point is that public content is the really most valuable one. And the levels of our success on a personal basis generally comes down to how much of the public content that we create and where we put our energy, or well, not necessarily always public, it can also be work content, etc., and how good we get that stuff to come across. So, for example, I can easily spend a lot of my day writing emails, and I can also write very long replies in my emails to convince various people of something like that I'm going to be worth talking to, or that they should do something that I want to do. And it can really eat up the day. Whereas if I allocated some of that time to creating public content of the same sort of value, but like broadly accessible, convincing people that I know what I'm talking about and that I'm worth listening to, etc., and that they should come on my show. It's the same content that I'm creating pretty much, but instead of when I'm putting that into a public place, it means that over time, the people that I'm reaching out to over email are more likely to actually have heard of me in a public situation or have seen things around me, and there'll be more of a buzz. And so they're more likely to actually respond to my email, and they won't actually have to write such long emails to convince people that I'm cool, because there'll be this whole body of work on the internet that convinces people that I'm cool. And that saves me time doing like the more manual stuff and gets more public stuff out there, which is awesome. And that's where I want to be focusing my energy at a simple level. And in general, I'll just talk about basically like what our time horizons are when we think about these things. So if you look at communication exchange, it's a very direct reward transactional process to be going through, and it's very short term. The rewards are in the instant. The person understands exactly what I've just said, and I'm going to get something back from them. And it's not like a long term thing. It doesn't scale, and it gets forgotten over time. Whereas if you go into public content, in the short term, you might have less direct reward. And it's not transactional. It's a thing that you just give to the internet, and you're not necessarily going to get anything back straight away. But in the long term, it's completely scalable, because you kind of do it once and that thing's there, and then you just keep on making it. It gets bigger and bigger, and it will last forever. And it then starts to give back more in the long term, because you don't have to do so much of the communication exchange in the immediate timing of things. I've lost the track of how I wanted to explain that. I think you can just cut that last little bit out. Thank you, Scene. That would be great. So when you go into the long-term focus of public content, you're not getting stuck in the instant reward loop, which, as we know, instant reward loops are generally terrible things to be in. And so we can just focus on getting better quality things out there. In the long term, we might want to spend a bit more time making it better, because if we're not trying to make it all the time. And the error essentially is that most of us don't think of ourselves as prolific content creators, and we just get stuck in just the communication exchange area instead of trying to make this content public, which is going to be so much more useful for us. And you might think that, hey, this isn't relevant for me. I've got like this job where like I'm not trying to get hold of like public people or convince other people that I'm cool. But I'm going to say that you're wrong, and that you should invest in yourself, because at any point in time, having more content out there around your interests and your skills is awesome. And because the more content that you have that points back to any kind of insights that you have and your thoughts is just going to be really useful. And when you start consistently creating content and putting it out there, whether that's just like on an Instagram account or a blog or a YouTube or whatever, it just shows that you have interests, and things will start coming back to you that you are interested in. And I think of this a bit like karma. Like the more content of value that you put into the public, the more opportunities that will come back to you of these sort of things that you're interested in. So for example, when I first started making my own episodes like this versus just me doing interviews, I ended up being asked to do a TEDx speech, not a TED speech, but you know, TEDx is still pretty cool. I mean, I haven't had a book deal, but I know plenty of people who have had book deals kind of presented to them. I've been asked to do various courses and things that are things that I might have wanted to do, but instead I'm being asked to do them. Something that is really big is finding jobs. So a lot of people that I know who've run podcasts on different things have been presented with like actual job opportunities in the areas that they're interested in, the areas that they are interested in. So my friend runs like a blockchain podcast, and he was asked to become a VC. Like, how cool is that? and now he gets to throw money at startups, investing in blockchain stuff. And for example, it really elevates your position when you're actually applying for a job. So let's say you want to get into clean technology and climate change and stuff because that's something you're passionate about. If you write a blog on some of the interesting books that you've been reading lately in that area, or if you run a podcast just trying to interview some people that are doing interesting things in the area, and then you go for a job because you're trying to transition into this career, you're just going to look really cool because if you're actually doing stuff and you're putting it out there. And so you could be against someone who's on paper just as good as you and maybe has read like 10 times more books, but because you're putting stuff out there, it just makes you so much more credible and you're more likely to be given offers in the thing that you're trying to get into and what you're interested in. And so it just makes sense to be going public with that kind of content. And I also think that it's a nice way of finding what you're interested in when you start trying to put things out there, is that I can't repeatedly make content about things that I'm bored about. So I have to kind of just do stuff that I'm interested in. And because I'm only creating content that I'm kind of interested in, means that the stuff that comes back to me is the stuff that I'm kind of quite happy to be having as offers. And so it's like a pathfinding way for what you want to do with your life, if that makes sense, which sounds odd, but honestly, you're not going to be interested enough to make stuff week in, week out that you're bored about. So if you're in a job which you're not very interested in, you're not going to be putting that out there, but things that you do want to be putting out there will just naturally sort of come to you, if that makes sense, in that you'll just find that where your brain naturally goes and wants to find out more about and is curious and to be creating more content will be where you should probably be going anyway in your career. So when you start making things more public, like, it's just going to be more likely to be coming back at you. So I think I've explained that now. And the basic principle is that if you're spending your day in email and meetings and calls, it's hard to really get out of that circle and this instant reward loop that you don't want to be stuck in. And so as soon as you can start making something public around it, or just like a review each day of something that you've been learning, like, don't overthink it, just put shit out there, like Gary Vee style, I guess, and the world's going to start coming towards you. And how can you do this in a healthy content creation habit? Because also if you're constantly on Instagram or something, it's kind of bad. So we're reminded regularly to avoid like sugar and eat more healthy fruit and vegetables. We aren't reminded daily of what sort of content we're creating exactly, which is why I made this podcast, because I think instant gratification, the content we're creating is just like communication. I just directly need to do this. And instant gratification, sugar, things that we want, we're told that we should eat like healthy carbs long term. We're not told that we should be making content and putting it out there, because that's a long-term thought for like the long-term success of your personal mission, whatever it is. So I'm here to tell you that like healthy decisions in your content creation is trying to go towards public. Just try and get stuff out there. I don't care what it is. Just start doing something. As in the last podcast before, I mentioned quantity over quality. Just start doing stuff. And as you're going along, the quality will improve and you'll gravitate to things that you actually really want to be doing. That is the two biggest points I really want to make in this podcast. Is you're making lots of content. It's really important that you just start putting some of it out there, because it's not that hard. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just start putting anything out there and work it out along the way. If you just consistently make a habit where you get something out each week, by next year, whatever it is that you're putting out there is going to be so much better. And then things will start coming towards you and it's going to be fun. You're going to have a growth mindset because you're going to be learning how to not do things badly and get better at it. And I'm just really interested to see what comes back at you when you start doing this. So thank you for listening. This has been Sam Harris, trying to change your mindsets for success and growth. I'm having fun. I'm kind of growing and working it out along the way. So this episode was actually based on some of my writing. I write a newsletter called Explosive Thinking because I have ADHD, and explosive thinking was me trying to explain my brain before I was diagnosed. Turns out I had ADHD, kind of obvious for someone to come up with a term like explosive thinking to describe how they think. But anyway, I write a newsletter where I create content just like this one, and you can subscribe to it. And I will be doing more episodes like this as well on the podcast. If you aren't already a subscriber, please subscribe. That would be lovely. And give me a rating on iTunes, because I've forgotten to plug that for years, and I could do with people rating me on iTunes again. Cheers. Until next time, try and get something out there. Think about it. After this podcast, hit pause. Have a bit of a thought about things that you're doing lately, and you can maybe write about. If you read a lot of books, just start reviewing them or something. Literally do anything and start putting it out there. That is my message today. Get out there, people. Ciao.